indeed my pleasure to welcome you to today's episode of Firecrackers. My name is Iriba Mitsalako, and I have with me here in the studio Emmanuel Ekole. He is the Executive Director, Elixir Trust Foundation. Good evening, and thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, all right. So let us see this short interview. This was after the NEC meeting where they advised withdrawal of the tax bill from the National Assembly. We also have to remember that even the Northern Governors Forum, when they had their meeting, it seemed that they felt like the bill is going to be to their disadvantage. So let us see what Governor Sheyi Makinde had to say about that bill. And when we come back, we will begin discussions on the rejection of tax reform bills and other matters arising. Do stay with us. Thank you so much for staying with us. If you're just joining us, this is Firecrackers, and we're just about to start discussions on rejection of tax reform bills amid other matters arising. We'll be taking this from the NGF meeting. They met to talk about a lot of things. One of it as the insecurity ravaging the nation. They also talked about youth restiveness, which is part of the reason there was a protest from August 1st to 10th. Of course, they know that there are things that needs to be done. And then the one that caught our attention most, well, that's the reason we're talking about it today. It's the one of the tax bill that they feel like it might not be to their favor. So let us have your reaction on that. What are your thoughts on that?
Every country, citizens work towards ensuring that the government try to carry out policies or carry out plans that actually add value to their lives. And every state is entitled to the tax that is due to such states. So in a situation where certain companies or thereabout operate in different states and pay certain taxes, and maybe their head office is in a particular location and ends up paying all the tax due to the government in that particular state. And if such revenue is not being directed as by ratio to what normally is supposed to be paid to other states and just paid to a particular state, and it's not shared properly, it means some states are being denied what is due to them. So for me, that certainly, if that is being done and those states have actually also benefits from tax due to them, then it's a step in the right direction. So that should be one. The second one should be fair taxation in the first place. A lot of persons, I won't even say a lot of persons, all persons are being taxed in the country at all levels. Sometimes they are even overtaxed. But if you are looking at the percentage of persons that are actually being paid by the government, you look at less than 1/3 of persons are on government payroll. That means more than 2/3 of Nigerians' population are fending for themselves, be it private working, maybe for privately owned companies or different persons or self-employed. But at the end of the day, they are paying tax. But sometimes the problem also comes where citizens start looking. We have been overtaxed, but in the first place, how well have you been using that tax that you collect from us? A lot of persons, if you are trying to put that tax into use and seeing that it's affecting positively the lives of people, then people won't even complain in the first place. Coupled with the fact that our leaders most times don't think about the good of citizens, unfortunately, in our country. But if they are fighting to see that these resources are equitably being distributed, it's fair and fine. But in a situation where we continue the status quo, where you continue paying tax to certain places, meanwhile, you're operating different states. Those states are housing you. They should also benefit from such tax. I think to a large extent that will help. And another thing, they were also looking at borrowing, right borrowing, and all those things. If you have checked from the last 10 or 20 years, most governments, state government, federal government, have not borrowed for the interest of the people. Because we try to look at what have they used the money being borrowed for. Buying of cars for people that are already being overpaid, like people in the National Assembly, or to the level of siphoning monies meant to cater for health, or what? So those are the issues. If you are borrowing, borrow right, but most times people borrow to invest so that you can have, after 1 or 2 years, you have something, some income start coming from what you have invested in and helps you to address those stuff. But when you just borrow to spend and you only spend on things that does not even touch the lives of the people, and then you're overtaxing the same people and not even doing anything to add value to them, then people always protest. So that's part of the reason why people protest. But at the same time, as we are looking at whether it was right or whether it's right to actually work towards equitable taxation, some of us will agree that yes, it's over time, it's overdue. It should have been something that we should have spoken about earlier. And for me, that would be the step in the right direction.
You are, because if we look at some of the big countries in the world, that one of their major sources, one major source of building the country is taxation, we would realize that the way we tax in Nigeria is quite different. An average Nigeria does not know how to file for tax, probably doesn't even know what tax return is. We just know that, okay, for people who work in formal sectors, you know that at the end of the month, a particular amount is removed from your salary, yeah, every month, and they tell you that, oh, it is going for taxes. We buy things and then we know that, okay, you see the receipt and then you see VAT. The VAT is taking this amount of money from it. So even if you are going to be doing taxes in the right way now, does it mean that each and every Nigeria would have to be trained on how to properly fight taxes? Because even if you look at the type of the amendment bill for this tax, it still does not really reflect on how each individual is going to be doing their taxes, or perhaps this is something that would be reconsidering in the future, because the taxes now majorly seems to be focused on companies and then value added tax.
Yeah, the government is supposed to pay attention to a lot of issues. You have to look at the taxes due to people based on what they earn. At the level of people working, earning salaries, you pay them pay as you earn.
Yeah.
There are also certain taxes when you organize programs. Or you purchase goods. You also have some things like VAT. Or withholding tax, among others, that are being deducted from the people. That is where the role of the National Orientation Agency also comes in. They have a role to enlighten people on different topics about policies of the government, or what the new things they are intending to do and how it affects the common. But in a country where some agencies are just there, like the National Orientation Agency or the National Directorate of Employment, they are just there. You don't really see what the role they are playing, but they are supposed to play this role in trying to enlighten people. Okay, this is what you are paying this for. This is what this is for. But the question shouldn't even be not just on the taxes or the kind of taxes people should pay or how they should file their returns. It should also go to the level of accountability of those monies being collected as well. And if their punishment or people can be brought to account if they fail to pay those taxes, why don't also put punishment also for people that fail to use those taxes for the use it's meant for? It's supposed to be both sides. If I fail to pay my taxes, this is my punishment. At the same time, if I pay my taxes, this is my benefit. But a situation where we are paying the taxes, we are not seeing any benefit. At the same time, you that are supposed to make good use of these taxes, you are using it for personal use, not for the state, and you are not even accounting for it. Then why do you expect people to continue paying these taxes? And unlike other countries, just like you noted earlier, countries where states are actually paying taxes, and some states actually just use this internally generated revenue to actually develop the states, and they are even accountable for such things. In Nigeria, we have federal allocations, we have internally generated revenues, among others. But most time we also see that outside the government approved or government known persons collecting tax in some states, like even Lagos, you have personal people collecting taxes as well. All around you, you own a shop. 5 different people come from different, God knows where, collecting taxes. And where is this money going to? Nobody is being held to account. And not that those are the hem of affairs, not that our courts, not that the security agencies are not aware of these things. They are aware. Sometimes they help in ensuring compliance for this overtaxation. So you are paying taxes for using a place. You have already paid for rent. You're already paying for light bill. You are paying utilities, different. And then you are paying to the government. Then still there are other persons, maybe chiefs in the areas, you are expected to pay and all those things. But you are also thinking, what is the use? You are paying taxes to this person. What use is the person using those taxes for? What benefit? What am I benefiting from it? So you find certain persons unable to pay their bills because they are even imagining that this business I'm doing is it even worth it in the first place? If I'm earning 300,000 here a month and I'm paying rent at the end of the year, I'm paying 1 million for it. So in a month I'm earning 300,000. You have staff to pay, you have utilities to pay. At the end of the day, what is your gain? Businesses operate for profit. So if there's no profit because you are paying triple taxes that normally should be just to 1 point, and it has gotten so bad that in Nigeria there are different persons. Almost every government agency now is collecting tax for one reason, one flimsy excuse or the other. Even agencies that are not even meant to be collecting taxes are finding ways to collect. And this is affecting the common man. And then it gets to a level at which still will keep coming back to their protests. Because as long as you are not being accountable, you are going there to represent the people. We have elected you to represent us or work for our own good. But we don't see that from the policies you are implementing. We don't see that from the laws you are making. And we are not seeing at how those policies you are making is affecting the common man. Then there's always be crisis in the land.
Okay, all right. So do you think that perhaps what a lot of states will stand to benefit part of this reformation, that a huge percentage or a sizable percentage will be going back to states that have generated so much money for the federal government? Do you think that perhaps is in light of this that a lot of call is going now for regional government?
To an extent, I will say yes. But to an extent, I will still say no. So Nigeria as a country over time have worked and has existed sometimes and functioned sometimes like a script where certain persons sit for a long period of time, plan how they can be able to colonize or how they can be able to take charge of resources of a particular state or take charge of a resources of a particular zone and work towards ensuring it is so for a large period of time. For Southwest, there have already been reports of certain persons controlling the whole zones. You go to North Central, among other places, you still hear the same results. So in trying to work towards equitable resources and ensuring that states get what is due to them is not a bad thing in itself. At the same time, also working towards states and zones also being able to have zonal administration where they can work for their own good. It's also not bad in itself. But a situation where...
Apologies for breaking the flow of your thoughts. We have to go for a commercial break now. When we come back, we will continue with the discussions. Do stay with us. Thank you so much for staying with us. If you're just joining us, this is Firecrackers, and we're talking about the rejection of tax reform bills amid other matters arising. So yeah, we were talking about the issue of regional development that you were saying it might or might not, the issue of tax might not be the primary call for it.
Yeah, so as I was saying, trying to ensure equitable distribution of resources, particularly for every state, resources or tax due to certain states to be given to them, it's fine, it's right. At the same time, ensuring also regional government or administration, it's also good to its right where people can, with certain interests or similar interests, can come together and work towards development of such a zone. It's fine. But sometimes you also tend to also look at also the biases that some persons may have in their mind. Because this is the same agenda a couple of years back or some years back. At different times, people tried to bring that to the fore. But it was actually rejected by some persons. That is why we decided to run a federal government, a federalism and all that. But now we are also thinking back at going back to things that we rejected earlier. I guess maybe it's because some states have also discovered that now they have minerals, right? And some of these minerals are that good and that expensive at the national arena. And they see to it that if we continue for it to function better, the only way we can allow the federal government or allow its operation and all that, it's if it's our things, we're allowed to be control of it. But some of these persons fail to realize that at different times, even currently, the crude that is using to actually fund the whole country is from another zone. So we know we have gold in this country. We know we have a lot of minerals in this country. And we know that at this time, some of these state governors or some persons in some of these states are already selling some of these minerals in those states. But they are not being accrued to the national treasury where it can benefit all states.
Definitely.
And some of these persons are pushing it to just be at the level of zone so that it becomes their thing. But they are failing to realize that at different times, other zones have actually supported them.
Yes, definitely.
How about some states that actually also don't have minerals? What happens? As long as we remain one government, as long as we remain one country, there will still be need to find a way, even if your zone is self-sufficient. You should also think about the good of other countries or states and what they did when those other zones were yet to discover those minerals in their location.
Okay, all right. So now we are joined by Chief Ivan Awor, who is joining us live from Delta State. He is a taxation expert and past president, Cosima and Basiba. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us today on Firecrackers.
Good evening.
Okay, all right. So thank you so much for joining us at this time. So could you please tell us of your thoughts? Because when it comes to this issue of the bill, we add the NEC, we add the NGF, that's the Northern Governors Forum, and the National Executive Council. They seem to not be so much accepting of this bill. But we also have the president who is advising these sectors that they should let the bill still go forward. It should go through the legislative process because it seems like Nigeria have a lot to gain by it passing. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, thank you very much. You see, I do know that the president means well by pushing forward a bill for the amendment. First of all, let's realize this. We had tax laws in this country, but there needs to be amendments to adjust areas for better performance. I definitely agree. There is shortfall in revenue generation as far as taxation is concerned in this country. There must be a way to ensure that more and more people get into the tax band and are paying tax in this country. But you are in a federation. In a federation, the federating entities have responsibilities. You contribute and you get. And to balance this, that is why when you have the tax laws and revenue sharing formulas, you need to be sensitive to one, derivation, two, the population. These are all what encompassed into the existing tax laws. So the areas that act those dissenting voices in NEC and parts of the country that are dissenting is simply was the consideration in terms of derivation, in terms of population, in terms of equality, were they taking cognizance of when this new law is being passed? Let me tell you the specific area that concerns most of us in the South especially. If all the oil companies producing and paying taxes here, if they are based here in the South, there will be no quarrel. But their head offices are in Lagos, some in Abuja, and they collect taxes and other things from our states. And the taxes, the VAT especially, is paid in Lagos head office. The eventual thing will be that if we are talking about fair taxation and fair revenue sharing and things like that, you will find a situation where those states where the derivation exists, will not benefit and we end up losing. So those are the areas that concern us, and our lawmakers must adequately address this. If the bill does not address them, there must be ways to address these fears that we will not be further shortchanged. Let also tell you, those applies to those people from the north who are also against it. They may be quarreling that if you do these fair things or whatever, and they are going to be shortchanged in terms of both equality and in terms of population. How are you going to address that? That is where the politics of federation comes in. When you are making laws that will impact on revenue coming to each section of this country, you must be sensitive to that and address its impact when you are making those laws. Those are our fears, my sister.
Okay, all right. But when it comes to taxation in Nigeria, there's always been this criticism about how unfair it is. Because if we have states like Lagos that is contributing so much to the national purse, and then if we are to compare with other low income states that are not really contributing that much to the federal government's purse. But at the end of the day, when the distribution is being done, Lagos as a state that is contributing so much, the amount that is getting to them, it's still going to be a sizable amount, but not compared to countries who are contributing very little or nothing to the pulse of the federal government. But because of their size and population, they still get huge chunk. Do you think that perhaps this might be a wake-up call for these states to start really working on themselves and looking for ways to generate more internally so that at least at the end of the day, we could really talk about equality when it comes to sharing?
Thank you. I don't 100% agree with you in terms of revenue. Tax revenue coming from Lagos. I don't 100%. I've just told you right now that most of the oil companies, because they had their head offices in Lagos, they pay those taxes in Lagos. So you think Lagos is generating that much? Lagos may not be generating that much. I stand to be proven wrong. That is one. Number two, you are in a federation. For you to be in the federation, you have what you need to contribute. You have what you need to sacrifice. The same thing applies to the other part of the federation. So you must take cognizance of this. I am not saying 100% no, the bill shouldn't go. No, the bill must be adjusted in such a way that fairness, equity, and politics of it must be taken into consideration. Otherwise, the bill won't pass, or even if it gets forced through, it will bring bad blood. That is what I'm saying. Nobody's saying that people are undertaxed or overtaxed here. We're not even talking about the tax right now. We are talking about the sharing of the eventual revenue that will be gotten.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much for that. So, does it mean that you would also support the call for reemergence of regional government, or perhaps a more realistic federation, practicing the real federation, whereby each states are going to be in control of their assets, even if a lot of people might not be buying into the idea of the regional government?
I think it's the regional government or federation, whatever way you call it, it has to do with what is binding them together. If it is region, is it a federating region? Is it a confederation? If we have a station where we still have your executive list, your concurrent list, and your legislative, as long as those things, we need to review them and see things that goes back towards the states. It's only then that you are actually giving more powers to the states. If they are going to run their economy, if they are going to run their infrastructure and things like that, yes, that is what you call a true federation. We are not there yet. I don't even think anybody is proposing that for now. But if we get that far, then of course, this essence of making laws that of sharing formulas and things like that will be non-existent. As for saying you want them to be the states to be doing more tax and so on, the loose law is done actually to reduce multiple taxation. That is one of the reasons why, of course, I will support this law. But when the way it touches the sharing, that is what worries people like us.
Kiora, we thank you so much for sharing your views with us on Firecrackers. We truly appreciate your presence. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
All right, and that's Chief Ima Awuru, who joined us live from Delta State. He is a taxation expert and past president, Cosima and Dasima.